And we are live. Okay, we're a little bit early. It's not quite the post game, so we can't really call it the post game pint today. But Matthew Trueblood joins me, and we're going to talk about the Twins, this Cleveland series, maybe look ahead to the Chicago White Sox series. Hopefully, if you're watching the game and you're following us on either Twitter or YouTube or Facebook Live, hopefully you'll send us lots of questions and give us plenty of content to answer as we go live here. So, as we talk, the Twins and Cleveland are in the bottom of the seventh, and the Twins are leading 7-4, but obviously the game not over yet, so we can't be talking about brooms or anything like that yet. But Matthew, let's start with you. How is it going? I know you're also a Cubs fan, so today is a pretty exciting day for you as well.
Yeah, I didn't break this to you ahead of time, but I am a Cubs and a Packers fan, Seth. So things are going fantastic for me. It's a lovely Sunday.
All right. Well, let's avoid the Packers situation, and let's talk just for a second as we're bringing in some audience here, and before we start dumping into the Twins. Alec Mills, what can you tell us about him? I mean, certainly not your top prospect turned good. This is a pretty interesting story.
Yeah. So for those who didn't see exactly what we're talking about, Alec Mills no-hit the Brewers today in a 12-0 Cubs drubbing. That sort of helps solidify Chicago's place at the top of the NL Central. But the big news is obviously Mills no-hitting them. And Alec Mills is sort of a very surprising guy to throw a no-hitter. It's not typical no-hit stuff. He tops out at 90, maybe 91 miles an hour. But he is a pitchability guy all the way, and he's a really fun story. I mean, a former college walk-on at a small school, Tennessee Martin. It's mostly change-ups. Like, his slider is in the high 70s. His curveball regularly sits in the mid to upper 60s. So there's nothing about him that's overpowering. Instead, what he's going to do is a lot of funk in the delivery. He actually lands with his landing foot pointing off toward like the third base dugout, which I never see a pitcher do. But that's where it's going instead of pointing toward home plate. He's crossfire. He's a big guy, so he creates tough angles for batters. And when he is on, which he was today, obviously, no hitting him, it's not necessarily swing and miss stuff, but it's really, really fun to watch. It's old school, tons of command and interesting movement and variety. So it's a great story, and it was a fun thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, I bet. And, as Twins fans, we got to experience the Kenta Maeda game. That was a lot of fun and didn't turn out to be a no-hitter, and ultimately it ended up being one of the most disappointing games probably of the season. But, just a great moment. I remember looking back at that Scott Baker game where he lost the perfect game, I think, to a Mike Sweeney bloop single in the ninth inning too. So there's not much better than watching that. So fortunately, again, we're fortunate we have baseball this year. But let's talk a little bit about today's game. Again, as we're speaking here, it's not final yet, but we can tell you that it's 7-4 Twins going into the eighth inning. I want to talk a little bit about Michael Pineda. He's been absolutely fantastic in his first couple of starts. Today, he got off to a slower start, a little bit different than what we're used to. Did you see anything different, or ultimately do we just say, hey, he's been good for two? We're going to expect some of this to a lineup that can hit him a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think there was a ton different. The velocity was still there. I will say he's a guy who traditionally has had almost reverse platoon splits or virtually no platoon split. And I've always sort of struggled to square that with the style of pitcher he is, which is it's basically fastball slider, and he sprinkles in a few changeups, right? To me, he seems like a guy who should be able to dominate right-handed batters and right-handed heavy lineups, which is what we saw him do to the White Sox in his first start back. But the Indians and teams like them, which both the Rays and the A's, potential playoff opponents, are very much like Cleveland in terms of how their lineups work. They've got a lot of left-handed or switch hitters, and they will platoon against you. And those guys are all going to be very patient. They're not looking to obliterate the ball. They are just trying to work a count and get a pitch to hit. That is a pretty tough matchup for Pineda, and we saw that today. Now, he caught some bad breaks, too. but I think there's almost a magic number with him where he should be throwing about 40% sliders at this point in his career in order to be the most effective pitcher he can be, and really to have total parity between his slider and his fastball. And I don't think he necessarily has the confidence yet to do that against a lot of left-handed batters. Now, working under Wes Johnson, he progressed in that respect last year, and I think he'll continue to this season. But today was a good test where he had some really deep counts against tough left-handed hitters. And there were a few times where I thought he went one too many times to the fastball and got burned, and they made hard contact against him because of it. So it was a challenging start for him. He weathered it pretty well, really, and came up with some really big outs. Wasn't getting a ton of support from his defense. But there are clearly things that he can still improve upon if he's going to be the most reliable possible playoff starter for them.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the line. I mean, he had 8 strikeouts to just 1 walk over 4 2/3. So he must have had some pretty good stuff going. I know that Cleveland's lineup isn't exciting, but I keep saying to people that when you're top of your order is Francisco Lindor, Cesar Hernandez, Jose Ramirez, Carlos Santana, and Franmil Reyes, that's a pretty good starting point. Each one of them has, I should say the first 4 of them have at least 2 hits in this game. So I don't think, we can necessarily just overlook the offense that Cleveland has. The bottom of the lineup isn't very good, but, I mean, they can do some damage from the top of it.
That's right. And, I mean, all tough at-bats, all patient hitters, all can spoil good pitches sometimes, all are switch hitters that you can't just play matchups against. And I think that came into play with Pineda, even though, again, he ultimately weathered that well, avoided the big black mark against him, and kept them in the park, kept it where the Twins could jump out to the lead after he left. But it was definitely a slog for him in a different way than it was against Chicago or Detroit.
Sure. Let's start again. Twins fell behind 3-0, but maybe surprise for the second straight game, Marwin Gonzalez came up with a big 2-run home run, and he had really been struggling offensively, and I'm sure that's been discussed plenty here. The at-bats seem much better. The swing seems much stronger. Even the balls he's following off, I think, are being hit pretty well. So, I mean, aside from that, are you seeing anything different? Is there any reason to believe that, maybe talk of Travis Blankenhorn coming up, little fire or something?
I think, I didn't see a huge problem with his mechanics early in the season. What I was seeing, and this has been common to hitters throughout the entire league, I wrote about it kind of early in the year at Baseball Prospectus, but hitters were really struggling at pitch recognition and timing. And off the record, some guys were saying, look, summer camp, I know they were doing their best, but it was no kind of environment for honing pitch recognition or timing the way that you normally would in a Cactus League or a Grapefruit League setting. And I think that carried over into the season for everyone, but for different hitters, it carried over to different extents, just the same way it would with a normal spring training. Guys get ready at different rates. They take a little longer or a little less long. They need to see a few more pitches, get a few more reps, or they need fewer. It just depends on the individual. I think Marwin really struggled to find that groove where he knew what pitchers were going to do to him. He was ready for it. He was able to make the timing adjustments he needed to make. And all that's starting to fall into place for him. And that seems improbably late. And so this kind of seems fluky. But going back to last year, before he dealt with a lot of injuries in the second half, and he's dealt with some of those even lingering into this year, he was hitting the ball much harder than he had even in Houston, even in his best season. So the Twins have coached him in some positive ways, gotten him doing some things that are going to help him generate consistent power. And I think he was unable to unlock that for a long time, but he might just be reaching the point in the season for him where he's finally able to catch up to where he'd like to be in a normal 162 game, uninterrupted kind of ramp up year. Not to say that he's going to become a star now and have a reprise of his 2017, but I think you can count on Marwin to be a steady-ish bottom of the order hitter based on what we're seeing.
No, I should I'd probably be remiss, but might as well take a step back. And we're not quite to the post game. I don't know if you've got a pint, but we should probably talk about that a little bit. Matthew Trueblood, what is your post game, not quite post game pint?
Not quite post game, not quite pint, and I am consistently just boring and basic about this stuff. But it's a Corona Extra, so cheers.
It's just what everyone is looking for, a little extra Corona these days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So just to continue again, whether you're watching live on Facebook, which again we appreciate, on Twitter or Periscope, or if you're watching on YouTube live, we certainly welcome any questions, comments you might have. Please feel free to just leave a comment and on your page, and we'll be sure to answer those as soon as we get those. I feel like I need to take a step back. I did the show last night with Andrew and Nate, and the final thing we kind of did right before we signed off is we saw the news that Brent Rooker has a fractured arm, or something in here, and he's going to need a procedure done right away to get that fixed. So he's done for the year. The corresponding move to that was Max Kepler coming off the injured list, and of course he's 0 for 4 so far today. But more important, he's just going to get, say, 8 to 10 games here quick before the playoffs start, which I think is more important. Wanted to first start with Rooker, and I know you probably talked or maybe even written a little bit about him, but you see the minor league numbers, you understand he has the ability to mash, you know that there's going to be some strikeouts. Even as a guy that follows the Twins minor league system daily through a normal minor league season, I was very impressed with the at-bat to at-bat, solid. I mean, he never really gave away an at-bat, and that's pretty good. I know it's only, 20 at-bats or something like that, but, I mean, that, to me, was noteworthy. Did you see anything in his swing or in his approach?
No, basically the same thing you saw, and I agree with you. I mean, with that profile, for a prospect, for a young player, the right, if he's going to be a corner outfielder, he's not going to be a good one. It's very dependent on the bat, and when it's just a right-handed hitting, it can be a really high variance profile. You've got to get the approach right, and it can be hard to calibrate that approach. And for him to come up in this strange season, I just talked about the difficulties that a veteran hitter like Marwin Gonzalez went through, maybe is still going to go through. And to have him consistently putting together such good at-bats, seeing pitches, and I think being, without getting into swing mode and just hacking at anything, he was always ready when he got the pitch that he was really in a good position to handle. That's a testament to the Twins' player development staff at the alternate site in St. Paul. It's a testament to overall the organizational commitment to, they want their hitters to not get over anxious, but always be ready when they get that strike that they can handle, and try to lift it, try to get it to the pull field, try to hit it as hard as they can. Right? That all sounds simple and almost troglodytic, but it's what great hitters do these days. And the Twins are getting better and better, improbably better, at making all of their hitters maintain that focus from one at bat to the next. And that allows them to kind of widen the margin for error, or make sure that they fall into that narrow margin for error with a player exactly like Brent Rooker. So it was really exciting, and makes me a little more optimistic about Rooker filling a larger role for the team going forward than I was coming into this season.
Yeah, so the Twins were down 3-2, and of course, who else is going to tie it up with another home run? Nelson Cruz. I mean, we've all seen his numbers over his first 162 games with the Twins, and he just continues to do that. He's I think he's hit 5 home runs in the last 12 or 13 games. He's hitting like 385 over that stretch. I mean, there's just not enough superlatives. And I don't expect, we talk about him, it seems like every day, but, just great at bat after great at bat. And he is, I think, striking out a little bit, but, man, there's just no slowing down.
Yeah. I mean, it's so impressive how well he knows himself, how well he knows what pitchers are going to try and do against him, what defenses are doing against him. I mean, we're still seeing teams shift against Nelson Cruz, put the second baseman behind or on the left side of second base, about half the time. Why? The man has shown he'll go the opposite way whenever he feels the need to. And when he doesn't, if he starts to think, all right, they're ready for me to do that, they might throw me a pitch I can turn on instead, he just does that. It's not that long a swing, even though he's working deeper counts and he's willing to swing and miss in exchange for always putting his best swing on the ball and generating power on contact. I mean, this is how you continue to be a dominant hitter at age 40. I know that people attribute basically all of late career Barry Bonds to steroid use, right? And there's a little bit of truth to that, but there's a larger truth that Bonds just had always been a great hitter with a great approach, tons of natural power, and he ended up learning exactly what teams were going to do to him and exactly what he didn't need to try to do in certain situations and how he could succeed just by knowing what was going to happen and anticipating and going with the pitch that he got. And that's what Nelson Cruz has been doing ever since he put on a Twins uniform, even before that. But he's taken it to another level here as teams try this hyper-modern approach to both pitching him and defending him that just doesn't work on a guy who's not hyper-modern. That's not who Nelson Cruz is. It's really fun.
And I do want to talk about the Cleveland starter today, but before we do that, he did give up a third home run today. And again, tie game. Ryan Jeffers came up big. He had the home run off of Shane Bieber that gave a little extra insurance on Friday night. And again today, big 2-run homer. I think he got a hanging slider, to be honest. So it was probably a pitch that if he would have missed it, he probably would have been upset at himself. But he got it. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to hitting mistakes, and he did that. Kind of the same questions I asked you with Rooker, but I mean, again, I follow the Twins minor leagues, and I was very high on Jeffers all along. But the bat's legit, the power is legit, the approach is legit, and the defense has been even better than I would have guessed. That's not to say, I mean, Saturday night there was some ugliness. It seemed with communication with him and Clippard, or even him and Duffy a little bit. Whether it was signals or whatever it was. And I'm not going to say that was good, but for the most part, the defense has been fine. So, I mean, have you found anything with Jeffers to give you any pause that he won't be potentially a very, very good major league player?
No, yeah. I think the sample that we've gotten with him is considerably bigger than we got with Rooker, unfortunately, just because Rooker ended up with this injury. But so we've gotten to see a few more maybe of the holes or the vulnerabilities, or especially the inconsistencies that come with being a younger player who's got big adjustments to make, because he wasn't really even, right on the cusp of the major leagues last year. So it's a steep learning curve. He's doing it, and he's doing it really impressively. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be growing pains, and I think there have been. We've seen kind of a lot of the swing and miss in his game. But he has started to get a little more comfortable with the fact that, yeah, I'm going to swing and miss. That's part of my profile as a player, especially against big league pitching. But if I go in understanding that and I'm still looking for my pitch to drive, which again is the Twins do as good a job as any team in baseball at emphasizing that to their hitters. We know you're going to swing and miss sometimes. We don't want you to get passive. We don't want you to miss that pitch when you get it, the one you can really handle. And Jeffers has started doing that, and it's really exciting because you knew that was in there. You know it from the frame. You know it from the swing. But how much he was going to be able to tap into it depended a bit on could he come up and take confident at bats, even knowing he's going to strike out a fair amount. He's going to hit at the bottom of the order. He's not going to emerge into a star, especially a superstar hitter. He can be more than enough for a good defensive catcher. More than enough for your team to be a first division player if he can just go up there with the confidence to say, when you give me my pitch, whether it's by accident or giving in because you've fallen behind in the count, I'm not going to miss it and you're going to feel the hurt. It's been really fun, especially, lately it seems like he's doing that more and more in really big situations.
And I know I spent a lot of time last year talking up the 2021, or maybe even I was thinking 2022, maybe Twins backstop combination of Mitch Garver and Ryan Jeffers, thinking, how good that could be in some form, and obviously Garver was hurt this year, and I think probably hurt a little longer than we know. But I'm looking at it as 2021. You could have both of them catch 81, make 81 starts if everyone's healthy. Just play them every other day, keep them both strong, and lefty, righty, just play them. And I'm excited about that possibility because I do think Garver is going to be fine. Now, no real updates on him other than it sounds like he's going to go to Chicago with the team and hopefully be able to come off the injured list. So, how do you see the catcher position playing out this year? Because even when, with Garver coming back, he's not going to just suddenly start starting every game. And that was almost a scary play there right there with in the outfield. So maybe it still is. I mean, how do you see it playing out? Astudillo's there. I think we can agree that defensively that's a step down. And at some point, Alex Avila is probably coming down. And as it comes to a 28-man playoff roster, what do you do? And I know so much of that's dependent on just how well Garver comes back health-wise and if he gets enough at-bats to really feel comfortable hitting, too.
Right. I mean, he was another guy who clearly was not ready to be himself coming out of the gate at the plate anyway, even when healthy. So we'll just have to see how that plays out for this year. For next year, I think you're exactly right. I think the NBA, with the sort of broad load management model that every team's adopting, right? And the NFL with, you see more and more running back by committee. Basically anyone who can afford to, who has the depth at that position is doing running back by committee. We're trending in that direction. We've been trending in that direction with pitching for a very long time. We're heading in that direction with catching too. Any team that is able to find two credible, solid catchers with relatively balanced, easy for me to say, skill sets, are going to use them really evenly and keep everybody as fresh as they can. Now, that's hard to do. Finding catchers good enough, two catchers good enough and cheap enough to justify running your team that way isn't easy. But if the Twins can do that, they're going to. And that may not mean 81 and 81, or it may mean, this is a different conversation for a different time, but Nelson Cruz could walk in free agency this year. If that happened, you might see Garver DH a considerable amount, even when he's not catching. So it's kind of a half a day off, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there's plenty of room for both of these guys to get plenty of playing time in the short, medium, and long term, as long as they both continue to succeed and thrive under the Twins' developmental model.
Hey, now, Matthew, I sent you a message on here just asking if you've got a certain time that you have to be done. So if we approach that, send me some sort of a cryptic message or something like that and let me know. And I can either keep going or we'll call it good. We'll see if we we'll see if we get more questions in the chat and things like that. And if so, I'll stick around for a little bit longer, especially if the game goes final. But cool. I did want to get your thoughts. I was very much looking forward to seeing Tristan McKenzie. Mm-hmm. The Twins beat Bieber, the first team to do that on Friday. They basically doubled Zach Plesac's season ERA yesterday in beating them. But I was really looking forward to seeing McKenzie up close in person. I know he gave up the 3 home runs, but I think he had seven strikeouts. I mean, the guy's got some strikeout stuff. I'm curious your thought just on what you saw today.
Yeah.
You've seen in the past.
It's definitely, I think there are days when his slider is a little better than we saw today. The curveball was really good today, and I think that pitch is always there for him. The big question with McKenzie, and anyone who was watching the game saw it, it jumps out right away. This guy, I think his nickname is Sticks, and it's not for no reason. He is skinny. He has always been that way. It's not a frame where he's going to throw on a lot of weight, now that he's in the majors or something. And he has a relatively long track record with arm trouble. It cost him all of last season, or very close to it, and has cost him time even in the past. So I'm a little worried on behalf of Cleveland. This can be a backhanded sort of positive for the Twins. A little worried that when he came up, McKenzie averaged almost 95 miles an hour in his first start with his fastball. And that trickled down to about 93.5 in his second start, 92, 93, 92.5. Today it was 92.2. he's not built for durability. He's had arm trouble in the past. There's a chance that this guy's just not wired to hold up and go even what we call deep now into the 5th or 6th inning in big league games for any sustained period of time, now or in the future. In the future, maybe they can fix that. But for this season, it sure looks like that's going to continue to be the case, even with a relatively deep arsenal. And we saw the fastball just flatten out on him a little bit, especially in the later innings. And that's when the Twins started pounding him. McKenzie's he's still a solid pitcher and a solid weapon, but I think Cleveland already is missing Mike Clevenger a little more than perhaps they thought they would in their rotation when they dealt him at the deadline. So that can be good news for anybody who's going to run into Cleveland in the playoffs and for the teams who are fighting with them in the AL Central. It should be the case that this pitching staff has been shortened a little bit, maybe even a little bit more than we knew with that trade of Clevenger, and that opens the door not only for this year, but it maybe makes them a little more beatable as the Twins and White Sox look at what could just turn into a 2-team race in 2021.
Yeah, and I think we know the White Sox will be there. It depends on what they do with Lindor and some other things as well. But obviously, if anyone's still watching the game while listening to us, you may have seen that Buxton and Rosario didn't really collide into each other, but clearly Rosario hurt his wrist or something like that, and he has been removed from the game with Ray Adrianza hitting for him here in the bottom of the 8th. But I mean, we do have a question, and these are always tough questions because you don't want to assume anything. But my manimal, well, we'll go with that. Asks, if Rosario is hurt, will we see Alex Kirilloff? And if he's out for the year, I mean, again, I hate those questions because he might just be a little sore or got a little scared because something twisted. I mean, there's just no way to know. If Rosario's out for the year, and again, I hate to say that, but I mean, is Kirilloff the next up at this point with Rooker out?
I think it has to cut one of two ways. And honestly, my short answer is yeah, I think so. And I'm interested to hear what you think too. The only other option would be starting to push Byron Buxton to play every day more regularly and giving a full-time role to Jake Cave or Lamont Wade, which the Twins have been rightfully reticent to do in the past. If Rooker were still here, you might say, okay, well, we're going to go into a platoon between one of those two guys and Rooker. And that seems like a pretty decent option. But without him in the picture, I think you've really got to entertain it because the upside that one of those guys could give you in the short term and then into the playoffs is so much higher. And the floor doesn't necessarily seem any lower. What do you think?
Well, it is an interesting question, and I mean, normally I enjoy them. I just hate to see a guy get hurt and immediately we jump to, hey, who's going to take? I mean, it just seems almost celebratory. But I agree with what you're saying. Here's what as you were talking, I was thinking, the worst thing you would do, I mean, Kirilloff has to be added to the 40-man roster after the season. So what you don't want to do is have to option him with 2 games left. So I could see a scenario where they see how it plays for 3 days. They get to the 10 days remaining in the season, and then you call up Kirilloff. You don't have to worry about optioning him, and you let him just play out the rest of the year. Is he better than Jake Cave today? It's so hard to know because they haven't been playing games and we don't know what's going on in St. Paul. So I think Kirilloff is the choice because of because he needs to be added to the 40-man roster after this season as opposed to Larnach.
Right. Yeah, that's a big factor.
Yeah, and ultimately we don't know how they're performing, if they're both healthy, if they're playing every day. Kirilloff has played some first base, which is a nice thing to have so that they could move him to first instead of Lamont Wade. And Wade can be the outfielder if needed. Or, that type of a roster scenario, I'd probably have to give it a little more thought. I feel like I'm missing out on somebody, or maybe they'd go with a pitcher instead, that kind of thing. But
I mean, maybe you guys talked about it last night. I know it's been kicked around lately. Travis Blankenhorn could come up, and then you could slide Marwin into the outfield. So that's an option.
Sure. And that's why I think they'd want to wait on that decision just for a few days to see really how it plays out. I mean, if it's like Rooker's situation, they do an initial X-ray and they find out something's broken, you make a move right away. if they're not sure if it's just maybe some inflammation or something, I think you let it play out a couple of days. Like him or not, I mean, and I know a lot of Twins fans, he can be very polarizing. Eddie Rosario is pretty good at baseball. So I think you have to hope that he's healthy.
I was just going to say, I know you and I feel similarly about Eddie. And how bad does Eddie have to be hurt to come out of a game against Cleveland? That's something we should wonder too, because isn't it? This game within the game stuff is not considered as heavily as it used to be. But I love watching Eddie play against the Tribe, and especially against Francisco Lindor. I know it cost him a base earlier today when he tried to throw Lindor out at the plate, and he shouldn't have tried. But he loves trying to throw Lindor out every chance he gets, and he loves hitting against Cleveland. And it's just, I love watching that man love playing and winning. It's great.
I mean, people may or may not be aware that hashtag have I ever mentioned how much I enjoy watching Eddie Rosario play baseball? I think I tweet that about every game, whether he hits a home run like he did last night or he throws the ball into the stands sometime. Justin Atkins brings up a good point. Don't they have a spot on the 40 if they put Rooker on the long-term IL, which is the 45-day IL? That could be the move. I don't think you can put anyone on the 45-day IL if you have an open spot, but I assume they don't have an open spot right now. But I could be wrong on that as well.
Yeah, they don't.
They could make that move, so that would be pretty simple. But again, hopefully we don't have to worry about that too long. Hopefully we're talking about something we don't really need to worry about here. Oops, hit the wrong button there. Wanted to talk a little bit. Josh Donaldson has been really good since he came back, and he had the home run today, both defensively and offensively. I'm just curious, basically the day he came back and Buxton came back and Pineda came back, this team has been really good. I want to say they're like 9-2, maybe it's 8-2. It's amazing the difference that one player can make. Getting three players back at that time was pretty huge.
Right. Yeah, they catalyzed this team in a lot of ways, and that's not surprising. They're all really good players, and they do some of the things that this team really needed them to do. Hang on one second.
It's fun doing podcasts with kids. Trust me, I've done them many times, and it's always enjoyable. So, Matthew, by the way, we're going to let Matthew go here in a couple minutes, and if the Twins game does go final in that amount of time, I might stick around if we're getting a bunch of questions. So if you do have questions, now is the time to get them in. Otherwise, we're going to call it a show here before 4:45. So go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've talked about ever since the Twins signed Donaldson, the ways that he's kind of perfect for them, the way he closes some of the holes in their infield defense, the way he takes a little pressure off everyone in the lineup, the way he fits perfectly with the offensive philosophy that I described earlier, that the Twins embrace as a whole team. What they want their hitters to do, what they want to coach their hitters up to doing, Josh Donaldson came in wanting to do, has been doing for 5-10 years at a really high level. So him coming back, obviously we know the way that Byron Buxton changes the game offensively and defensively, and in that sort of special teams dimension of his speed and base running, right? And we've seen all that on full display. I also think some of this surge is just good timing with those three guys coming back and some of the players that you were counting on who had been really struggling, starting to play better on a more consistent basis. We talked about Marwin. Jose Barrios is now stringing together good starts, and it kind of looks like he's put the early season big struggles in his rear view. So some of the things have naturally smoothed out, but that's been aided by having these guys taking playing time from the guys who were stretching the Twins most thin in some other places.
We got this question from John last night. I'm going to put that up there again for you today, Matthew, and just get your thoughts on it. Oh, man. What do you think? Yasiel Puig?
Yeah, I don't know the situation with Puig at all at this point. I don't know where he's spent this season. I don't really know what condition he's in. Maybe other people have a lot more information and I've just been missing it on social media or something. But I mean, he had almost signed with the Braves, and then he tested positive for COVID, and that got scuttled, and it just nothing ever came back together. So I don't know. I assume we're talking about for 2021 at this point.
I think he's talking for 2020.
I couldn't possibly trust that. I mean, I want to. I like Puig. I don't have any of the big makeup concerns that other people have with him. And I think especially on this particular team where there's not a whole lot of rigor to this clubhouse environment, I don't think they'd have any problem. Did I say rigor? I meant sort of rigidity. There's not a lot of rigidity to this clubhouse. I don't think they'd have any problem bringing in Puig and folding him in that way. I just have no confidence and no way to feel confident. Nothing he could show me in batting practice. Nothing he could show me if you had Jose Barrios pitch to him for 3 innings could prove to me that Yasiel Puig is ready to leap past these big adjustment and timing and all kinds of other issues that players who have had normal camps and normal time with their teams and all of that have had to start this season. I can't imagine a scenario where I'd be like, yeah, Yasiel Puig's more likely to perform for you than Alex Kirilloff or even Travis Blankenhorn. Unless the Twins really don't like what they're seeing from those guys in the alternate site. But even then, the only way I'm making that reach is if Eddie Rosario's wrist does turn out to be, totally in trouble.
With that, we are going to let Matthew Trueblood go, and we're going to say thank you very much to him. I am going to stick around just for a few minutes to see if this game ends here in the 9th or what happens. I'm not going to stay on forever, but if the game ends here in the next few minutes, I'm going to be willing to answer questions as we talk about that. So, Matthew, thank you so much again. Looking forward to your stuff on Twins Daily again this week. Have yourself an enjoyable evening.
Thanks, Seth. Have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, with that, we are going to continue here. We're kind of watching how the Twins game progresses here. We're in the top of the 9th. The Twins currently leading 7-5. Number 3 hitter batting for Cleveland, and should be interesting. So, again, if you're still paying attention, feel free. Please ask questions in the chat. I will get to those, and we'll talk through that as we can't necessarily do play-by-play here. But the Twins need to get 3 more outs. And, yes, Sergio Romo is on the mound. Francisco Lindor did make the final out of the 8th inning, so maybe a little less drama, but certainly a Cleveland team that would more than love to give a blown save to Mr. Romo. So, again, Max Kepler returned to the lineup today with Brent Rooker going on the injured list. The Bomba squad is apparently back after hitting 5 home runs on Saturday night. They have 4 more so far today, and hopefully they don't get any more at bats. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. But yes, it was good to see power from Marwin Gonzalez, who has come on here at just the right time. From Nelson Cruz, of course. I mean, if someone's going to come up big and tie a game in a big game, it's Nelson Cruz. Ryan Jeffers, 2-run homer to give the Twins a 5-3 lead at that time. Obviously a big deal, and he's come through with some big hits. And Josh Donaldson, again, he's been playing great since he came back. Real quick, we discussed this a little bit earlier. Who did the Twins call up for Brent Rooker's spot? And they didn't call anyone up today. They actually just took Max Kepler off the injured list, put him right back into the lineup. So there's your answer for that one. Lamont Wade, everyone knows I'm a big fan of his approach at the plate and all that. Today, 2 plate appearances, 2 walks. He just puts together such professional at-bats. I really enjoy seeing what he is able to do. At one point, the Twins had 4 hits in the game, and all 4 were home runs. I don't know if that's a great percentage. I mean, it's obviously a fantastic percentage if every one of your hits is a home run, but not real sustainable in terms of long term. But, they were able to add a few more hits as well. Miguel Sano struggled today. Obviously, it's not necessarily a big surprise to anyone who has watched him throughout the year. It's either big game or really struggled. He was fantastic for almost all of August. September's been kind of a hit and miss, up and down. Today, 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. And again, the hope is that there will be no more at-bats for the Twins. They're currently 1 out, runner on first base for Cleveland in the top of the 9th. Carlos Santana is a really good hitter as well. But yes, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, if you're watching live, please feel free to send in your questions. I'm happy to answer those. As far as the St. Paul connection, my reasoning that I think Kirilloff is the guy over Larnach is simply business of baseball kind of stuff, and that Kirilloff does have to be added to the 40-man roster at the end of the season, as Brent Rooker would have if he wouldn't have already. Kirilloff has to be added. Larnach as another year before he can even be on the 40-man roster. So I think just that makes more sense to go with Kirilloff. One other thing to kind of bring up is we've talked several other times about the Twins needing more speed potentially for a playoff roster, for pinch running situations, for that type of thing, flexibility. And I know Travis Blankenhorn's name has been mentioned. He's got good speed, but he's a bigger guy. He's strong. He's fast. But the name, if you want speed, Royce Lewis. And again, like Larnach, he doesn't have to be added to the 40-man roster for another year. But if you want speed on the roster, Lewis is right there with Byron Buxton in terms of speed. So certainly a name to consider. And I'm not saying they should do that or shouldn't do that. But as the front office is considering a playoff roster, it's worth at least having a conversation, putting him on the list and discussing him as well. One other thing I'm pretty interested in right now, it just seems to happen all the time, every year. I think if the season were to end today, which it doesn't, 2 more weeks and then it's done, the Twins would have the, I think, number 4 seed because they're the second place team that has the best record. Right now, the 5th seed would be Toronto, but they have a very small lead over the Yankees, which by the time you listen to this may be gone. The Yankees would have the second best record in the AL East, which would be the second place team, which would give them the number 5 seed, which would mean, that's right, Twins and Yankees, Target Field, best of 3. Now, again, right now, I don't know that would be terribly intimidating other than just the history. And we all know way too much about that. Depends on what Yankees hitters come back and how healthy they are. But yeah, in my mind, that's just how it's going to play out. And again, if this team is so good, and I think we all agree that this is a really good team, they're on a 100-win pace for the season. They just got to beat whoever's in front of them, and that's fair. But of course, it's got to be the Yankees, right? We wouldn't have it any other way. Let's take another question here from John. And again, thank you for that. And others, if you've got questions, feel free to add them. He asked, who is the speedster we had on the roster early before cutting to 28? The Aussie kid. And again, that was Aaron Whitefield, Australian. He has been since removed from the 40-man roster. Wasn't claimed by anyone else. Could be brought back, but right now he's not in St. Paul. I believe he's still in the States. Maybe that's something they encourage him to do, is just to stay in the States. But, again, he's a speed guy. He had a few at-bats last year in Double-A and struggled offensively. But great speed, great pinch running, steal some bases, and great center field defense. So, yes, that's the type of speed that you want on a roster. But again, right now he's not even in St. Paul. So the other thing about St. Paul is it's hard to know. Joan Duran would be interesting on the roster. Edouard Colina, who also hits triple digits and they say has the best slider in the organization. Those guys are really intriguing. Dakota Chalmers, it sounds like, has had a little bit of control issue, which isn't new to him. And his first year on the 40-man roster, not a surprise. I don't think they're planning on any of those guys coming up. I would be surprised if they did. It was awesome to see that Matt Cantorino and Jordan Balazovic were both added to the 60-player pool in St. Paul, because I think that's, just extra for them in terms of just getting visibility with the coaching staff, not the big league coaching staff, but the top minor league guys and guys that they will be learning from here. We also found out, too, that there will be some sort of form of instructional league this year, and that'll hopefully or probably start later this month. They do need to go through MLB with a plan for how many players at a time, how many tests, how that's going to be done, lodging. Obviously the Twins have the academy, but will they get it okayed if everyone's staying there? There's a lot going on there, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Kind of heard some mixed reports on the Arizona Fall League. There had been some discussion of them trying to do something. I've also seen that they're just not going to do it. So I don't know that we have anything official on that yet. So hopefully we find that kind of stuff out here soon. And again, thank you all for listening. I'm hoping to hang on here for just another minute or two, hoping to see the game completed. If the game is not completed after the top of the 9th inning, I'm going to call it a show. So bear with me. I'm sure this isn't the most exciting, and I do again welcome your questions. So please feel free to ask them. But I'm hoping to get through one more out. There are 2 outs right now, and it does appear that the Minnesota Twins have won. They have completed the sweep of the Cleveland Indians, and that is the first time I've said that. I meant the Cleveland Baseball Club, and nice. I mean, the White Sox did sweep Detroit, including, I think they beat them something like 20-1 over their 20-0 or 20-1 over the last couple of days. I am very much intrigued by, and there it is, Twins win. I'm very much intrigued by what can happen in this upcoming series. It's going to be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to the pitching matchups. I think the Twins are sending 4 good pitchers out there. I think, I'm really excited. I'm very curious if Wednesday, will that be the day that Jake Odorizzi comes back? I think that would be really exciting. I think, so we know Monday it'll be Jose Barrios against Dylan Cease, and Dylan Cease has been better this year. He's been pretty good. Right now, he is 5-2 with a 3.33 ERA, and Jose Barrios is 4-3 with a 4.40 ERA. Tuesday, Randy Dobnik, who is 6-3 with a 3.61 ERA, he goes up against top prospect, or one of the better prospects, Dane Dunning, who is 1-0 with a 2.70 ERA. I think he's made maybe 1, possibly 2 starts now. Wednesday, Lucas Giolito will go for Chicago. He is 4-2, 3.43 ERA against TBD or TBA. And we're thinking that maybe Jake Odorizzi, assuming no setbacks. So hopefully that's the case. And on Thursday, the Twins will send their ace, Kenta Maeda, who is 5-1 with a 2.43 ERA against TBA. So we still don't know who that is necessarily. But with that, unless there's any last second questions, I want to thank you all for listening. I really want to thank Matthew Trueblood for joining. He had some family stuff going on, so we cut it short. We went a little bit early today because that was the time scheduled. But, it's been a lot of fun. Well, thank you for the questions you've asked. We will have another show. We're hopefully going to have 4 shows this week after Chicago games. So you're looking at 2 offenses that are strong. The White Sox have been fantastic all year. The Twins Bomba squad has come back with 9 home runs over the last 2 games. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot of fun. And ultimately, at this point, the top 8 are going to make the playoffs. And it's just a matter of where they're going to be. And it's looking right now where the Twins will either be 3 or 4. Although, again, if they sweep Chicago and keep winning, in Chicago, they play 7 straight games in Chicago with the first 4 against the White Sox, the next 3 against the Cubs. They could still end up at 2 or, maybe even 1, but winning the division is important. It would be great. But thank you all for listening. Please feel free to spread the word. Head to twinsdaily.com for lots of news stories. There'll be a new week in review from Nick Nelson a little bit later tonight. It was a good week. Hopefully when we do this in another week, it's been another good week. So thank you all so much. You have a great week, and let's go Twins.